Yo, listen, it's Platinum Max, part of the Acclaim, the Platinum Playboy, best wrestler alive, and you are rocking with the Bob Culture Podcast. Yo, listen, Platinum on the mic, and I'm coming for your ass. I'm listening to the Bob Culture Podcast, and I think it's the hottest show in the game, because them and everybody loves the Acclaim. Now, scissor me.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into a very special PWI 500 edition of the BCP. We are not worthy, guys. Please welcome to the show. He is the editor-in-chief of Pro Wrestling Illustrated, Kevin McElvaney. Did I say that correctly?
You got it. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I spelled it phonetically on my thing. I know you're a big Simpsons fan. I saw a lot of the Simpsons gifs and all that stuff, man. So thank you for a few minutes. Appreciate it, bro.
Tattoos over here.
Do you really? Who do you got?
A couple. I got Homer from Mount Lushmore, and then I've got the sheep from Lisa the Vegetarian combined with a Minor Threat sheep. So
that's awesome. Yeah. Favorite Simpsons episode?
Oh.
That's tough.
That's a tough call. I have a soft spot in my heart for the Springfield Files.
Yeah, okay.
The X-Files episode. That's a lot of people they're not, because it kind of just completely destroys Simpsons kayfabe. It's a lot of really wacky stuff going on in it.
But it's the Simpsons. They get a pass. That's what they do. For me, Cape Fear, Sideshow Bob with the rakes. As a kid, I was laughing for like 20 minutes straight.
Yeah.
Amazing. But thanks for a few minutes, Kevin. I really appreciate your time, man. I want to put this out here first, man. Like what you guys do with the PWI 500, incredible. Like I want to thank you. I know you guys get a ton of criticism, man. I know you were prepping for the interviews, you were prepping for the Twitter comments. Like it really is a thankless job, man. And I don't want to speak for you, but like we'll do something similar at the end of the year for the indies here in the Northeast. We'll have awards and most improved and all that. And it really is thankless. Like it's hard to watch everybody. It's hard to get all the stats. You guys have the criteria. You guys have eyes everywhere, but you guys can only do so much, and you and your staff do an incredible job, man. And it really, and I'm just to all the wrestlers that watch, like it's a thankless job. It's hard. You can't please everybody. It's hard to get everything right, especially with 500 names. So thank you first and foremost, man. And just how do you find yourself kind of just like navigating the aftermath of the PWI 500? Because there's a lot of negative out there, but there's also so much positive.
Yeah, it is difficult because part of you just wants to put the issue out into the world and then, all right, logging off now.
Yeah.
But of course, you have to promote what you're putting out there, and you want to engage with people, especially the people who are either asking questions like in good faith, who have like a sincere question that maybe isn't addressed in the issue or something like that. And then the other side of it is you have people who are thrilled with the list for various reasons. And a lot of times that's wrestlers, particularly on the independent side, maybe someone who either hasn't ranked previously in the past, or if they have ranked, they've seen a big increase in their ranking. So, if you, the expression throw the baby out with the bathwater, if you were to not engage at all, you would miss out on that. And to me, that's one of the most rewarding things, because this is so much work, and it can be thankless, and there's a lot of nastiness and personal attacks and such. But again, if you don't open yourself up to that criticism, you also completely miss out on the good, and the gratitude that some people show is really humbling.
Yeah, and first of all, guys, no personal attacks. That's too much. This is pro wrestling. Let's take it. This is our escape. This is our soap opera, man. So let's keep that in mind. But we appreciate you doing that, man. And I want to give you a positive story. Like obviously, I gotta wave the Vicious Vicky flag because I'm not sleeping on the couch. But I remember, and then I believe the 250 comes out usually October for the women.
Yeah, so the digital edition comes out in October, and then it hits newsstands in November.
So a positive story. I know that, since we started dating, like that was kind of like a long-term goal for her in her career, man. And I remember I was upstairs, getting changed, and it came out, and she's screaming, "Oh, it's out, it's out." And I'm like, "Really?" I'm like, "Are you on it? Are you on the list?" She's like, 185. And we were celebrating. It was awesome. Like, I think, I'm not a pro wrestler, but I think to a lot of the talent, especially the indies, it's incredibly validating. You know what I mean? Like you're putting your body on the line, you're hitting those boards, you're traveling. Sometimes the pay isn't fantastic. You know, your body aches every single night. What are some like interactions that you have had on the positive side, maybe particularly from independent wrestlers? Do people reach out and thank you? Any stories you can share, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's first of all, I'm really glad to hear that. And Vicky, before she made the list, we were keeping an eye on her and watched her progress. And then she was, collecting championships, and it's no secret that's a big part of how you get on the list is with these kayfabe accomplishments and achievements.
Exactly.
Which, yes, it's kayfabe, it's within the storyline, but when a booker puts a championship on you, it's not a random act. It's not an act of pity or charity. It's because you're that good. So, but we've had lots of situations like that. I know someone like Darius Carter has just been, he really cares about where he ranks on the list to the point where he slipped a few spots this year. And I think it was less to do with him and more to do with the people who were, ahead of him were just doing such great work. But even he took that in stride, like, oh, okay, I'm a little bit lower. Well, we'll see about next year. And he noted his progress in the years previous with just as much enthusiasm. And you have a lot of people like that who really do take it to heart and who are grateful when they rank. Um, I always think it's strange when some people just think they're not, who are at a pretty high level, think they're not. I think Alex Kane made a comment like, I always expect not to be on this. It's like, dude, you were MLW world champion. Like you're going to be on the list.
Oh yeah.
And he ranked 25 this year. And I think he was shocked that he was that high, but he earned it. And you have people, sometimes it doesn't have to be a number that's so high. It's just being on the list at all. I mean, there's a documentary coming out, I believe this week, Being 500 from Dustin Wilson, Big Dust, who was number 500 2 years ago. And I caught a sneak peek of it, and it was a huge thing for him to have made the list at all. And he talks to other people who ranked at number 500 and gets their thoughts on it. And it's a real mix of emotions about it. But in general, people were, thought it was pretty cool when they made that spot. So I don't know. I love when I see these reactions, and it's not to get the reactions out of people. It's because they've earned it, but it's a nice like side benefit to it.
I love that. Perfect segue. And real quick, I got to ask you this, and I mean this with all due respect. Is this documentary, is it a parody? Because the stuff Dustin does is brilliant, so I'm expecting some humor. Is it legit, or is it like a parody, or?
It's legit. It is a
Yeah.
legitimate documentary. Now there's funny stuff in it. There's not. It couldn't possibly not be funny.
Really?
But the interviews are serious, and I mean, he talked to me for it. I appear in it for, I don't know, probably about a minute if it survives the cut that I saw. Talked to a bunch of other people, just within the industry, past and present. It was, yeah, he really did do a lot of work on it. So while you'll definitely have plenty of laughs while watching it, it's not like a Christopher Guest movie or something like that.
Yeah.
You know,
But brilliant, man. I love the stuff that Dust is. I've been a big fan of him up in the Northeast here. So that's so good to hear. Got to shout out the musical. I watched that again last night. The musical you did with them. Was that Dust's idea? Was that your idea? I absolutely loved it.
It was not my idea. It was, I forget if it was Dust or Killian McMurphy approached me first, but it was one of them. And then, they talked about it and had all these different ideas. And then before I know it, they sent me like a scratch track of what it was supposed to sound like. And this verse is yours. And like, okay, I guess we're doing this. So we recorded a vocal track for it. And then they actually came here. I forget if it was a Saturday or a Sunday, but we filmed it in the PWI office. That was legit. But they made the drive here over a weekend. And yeah, we took many, many takes, and I had to lip sync, and I definitely like missed my marks quite a few times. So we had to like go back and film it again, but it was a lot of fun. And we had Tom's Customs did that mock PWI 500 cover with Smart Mark Sterling on the cover for it. So that was fun too. We just had a really good time with it. And yeah, it was good.
Brilliant. That's one of my favorite things of wrestling. Like it is such an escape. But just like the levity and comedy. And I think people like Big Dust, Killian, Shane Fair, one of the announcers up here in the Northeast, what Big Ben's doing. Like I love the levity, man. And I love that sense of humor. We can always poke fun at ourselves or the independents and things like that. So
Yep.
the music was absolutely brilliant. I want to talk about that 500 spot because it's absolutely brilliant. And for a lot of people, maybe you're starting out, maybe you want to see if you made the list for the first time, you're going to start at the back. Typically, I've noticed certain spot, and I like this about it. I'm not knocking it. The 500 spot, maybe a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek kind of comedy spot or something like that. I absolutely love that. When I saw it was Big Dust, I was doing something backstage with him, and he's holding the magazine and Mr. 500 and living the bit. Now it was Blue Cane. People are trying to take shots at you because of Blue Cane. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Tell us about that 500, that philosophy for the number 500.
I didn't see there was criticism. What was the criticism of Blue Cane? They just said it's a ripoff. Like,
it was essentially, I won't name names, but you see all over social media, people are cutting, you ruined my life, Kevin, tongue in cheek, very, very fun.
Sure.
But again, very, very big character work here, but a manager of a certain faction up here in the Northeast. Oh, my guy didn't make it. And these 4 guys in my faction didn't make it.
Yeah, I know who you're
and
talking
Blue
about.
Cane. Yep. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. So Blue Cane was, so the thing with the 500 spot, yes, it's kind of a gimmick spot for lack of a better word. It is usually a comedy character, although like Nick Nemeth was number 500, way back. And it wasn't when he was doing an especially like comedic character. So it's not always. But like last year it was Andre Chase, again, kind of like the NXT, like silly character. And obviously they've had him pushed a little bit more sincerely. And number 500, saying that that's a silly character, that's not, we know he's a great wrestler, going back many years. So it's not, by any means a put down to be number 500. In fact, it's usually someone who is very special in some way and who's made a unique connection with the audience. And I think it's worth noting too with Blue Cane, that character, like there's this long tradition in the UK especially of these knockoff shows where there's wrestlers that are basically like not the Undertaker, or Hulk Hogan or something, where it's obviously meant to make people trick people and make them think that these are the real wrestlers, but they're clearly knockoffs. So in some ways, with him being a UK based wrestler and having this Blue Cane persona, it's sort of a tongue in cheek reference to that. So that kind of gives it another layer. But yeah, I think it's sort of a funny spot. Sometimes there are a couple other spots on the list that seem to have some kind of comedic bent to them. That may or may not include the numbers 69 and 420. Yep. But, it's ultimately we're giving this to people who deserve it. Nobody's on that list who didn't earn it through their performances, through their hard work, through what they did in the ring.
And those numbers that you mentioned, I wasn't gonna shine a light on it as much, but I like that the list has personality. And even though you have certain people in those spots, it's kind of almost perfect where the ranking is anyway. So it works out perfectly. It's absolutely
that's the
brilliant.
thing. We would never put anybody, like it might be a question of, does this person go at 420 or 421 or something? Yeah. They're already in the mix for that. We're not going to rank someone much higher or lower based on, but it is a fun little nod. And an example like Dominic Mysterio was 69 this year. And I honestly thought more people would pick up on that, but hey, whatever. But that's where he belonged on the ranking. That's around where like the Judgment Day members who weren't winning singles titles were ranked. He was in the mix and like, oh, well, look who it's time for. And he slots in perfectly here. So yeah, we do have a little bit of fun with it. It's not, it's pro wrestling. It's a pro wrestling magazine. There's a history of it being kind of silly, all of it, including the magazine. So while I think we're a little bit less gimmicky than we were years and years ago, it's fun to have these little nods in there here and again.
I love that, man. It gives the list a lot of personality and shameless promo. We're all about the shameless promotion here on BCP. Guys, get the issue. I think it's PWI-online.com. Correct me if I'm wrong. I got the digital issue. I'm looking around here. I always like to get the physical as well. If you check the website too, brilliantly done. I guess it was you, whoever did it. It has the actual states and the towns and the stores that carry it, which I was going down everything here in New Jersey. Absolutely brilliant. And then I went online to get the digital copy. I just paid $10 for the subscription because you get 8 issues for $10. I'm looking forward to the women's issue. I'm looking forward to all these issues you guys do throughout the year. So $10, guys, you can't beat that. I don't know if you want to weigh in, Kevin, shameless promo.
Yeah, for sure. So, first up, so the list of where it's carried is where we've carried recently. It doesn't, you might go out and not find it there, because maybe that store stopped carrying us or they stopped carrying magazines altogether. But in general, it's a guideline of stores that have been carrying us over the past. We try and make it easy for people. And specifically, the 500 issue is not going to be on newsstands until October 1st. So right now, it's the issue with Mercedes Monet on the cover, which is the fall 2024 edition. But yeah, that digital edition thing, we're really hoping people will pick up on that. We have a new digital edition that's just a lot cleaner looking. It gets emailed to you. It's very convenient. You don't even need like a login or anything like that to access your archive. It's one of those where you get the email and you click a link and then you're in there with all your issues. And it'll work, the same way, like if you whether you're getting the new issue or you're like, oh, where do I log in for this again? If you pull up the website, enter your email, boom, you're in. But the issue itself, the digital edition, is $6. The subscription for a limited time is $10. So why not do that? It's like if you are going to buy even a second issue, you've already made your money back.
That's literally my philosophy. I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to buy this next issue. I'm like, $10. I get a great magazine. You guys do such a good job. And a shout out to a lot of you and your crew who do such a great job, not only with the national product, but again, shouting out a lot of the indie talent. It's very hard to have eyes everywhere. It's very hard to keep up. There's a lot of wrestling. Jersey, very, very saturated. You guys do a fantastic job. So hats off to you on that one, guys. Again, PWI-online.com, $10. You can't beat that. Please subscribe. I want to ask you this one, man. We talked a little bit about it, but you're a big Simpsons fan. Obviously, I love you doing the bits with the goons and things like that. But the people who are kind of leaning into this list that they didn't make it or having fun with it in a very positive way and leaning, my wife is leaving me. I didn't make the PWI 500. I'll shout out Big Ben again, doing a great job. We just did an interview with him as the Shindy promoter. A lot of fun. Or maybe it wasn't him, but the videos that are coming out, for the PWI 500, people really leaning into it. I see you commenting on it. Do you have fun with that? Do you like it when people kind of get involved in that way?
Yeah, I offered to take Ben out and be his wingman so he could find a new wife.
Nice.
But no, it's a good time. I especially appreciate it when it's obvious that people are not genuinely blowing up at us. But I mean, is what it is. I remember a few years ago, people may not realize this. Danhausen had his no swearing policy for years and years. He would correct people for swearing. We broke him. We broke Danhausen. He saw that he wasn't number one in the list, which he for some reason expected to be. And this is before he was, maybe right when he was signed to Ring of Honor, but he saw Jon Moxley was number one and he cursed us out. It was just beep, 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 beep.
Brilliant.
And then insisted that we rectify things by putting him on the cover. So I kind of printed out a photo of him with a birthday hat on that I think Basil Mahmoud took. And I sent it to him or showed it to him, and he's like, "This will get you a break for a couple of days, but next time." And it was just, it's fun to feed back into it. If you go back to the heyday of wrestling magazines and PWI in the 1980s, you had, or actually even earlier with Bill Apter, with the various Stanley Weston mags, like he'd be going and interviewing people and taking their photos, but he'd also like occasionally get throttled by somebody, or he would be put in harm's way. He would be run down. And I don't know. I think that's one of the more fun parts of, if you're going to be media in this space. I know some people look down upon that. And certainly, like, if you're trying to cover something serious and there's a major story going on, you need to give that the gravity that it deserves. But there's room to have fun as well. I really do think you can have it both ways if you're, especially if you're a publication like PWI, where you have such a history of having done that.
Yeah, you guys do such a great job, and I love it when people lean into it and have fun with it. And I know I keep saying this, but to me, again, pro wrestling, it's a big escape from everyday life, and I love the levity and the comedy, and to see people poke fun at themselves sometimes is really a lot of fun.
Sure.
I do want to ask you this one. I keep saying you guys do such a great job highlighting pro wrestling history and pro wrestling as a whole. It's not just the national product. You concentrate on the independent talent. I already told you earlier how much that has meant in this household and here in the Northeast at large. but I think largely it's based on, you know, perhaps where you work, what you've accomplished. Like you talked about titles and things of that nature. Just talk about a little, and we know the criteria it's listed, but talk about when it comes to keeping an eye on the independent talent. Guys, again, there's so much independent talent all over the world. PWI does a great job, but when it comes to putting the independent talent on the list, because a lot of times you'll see independent talent sometimes ahead of some of the national talent and some of their accomplishes based on the criteria, man. And I think you guys do a great job with that because it's all of pro wrestling. Could you just talk a little bit to putting the independent wrestlers on the list and where they go?
Yeah, I mean, sort of the way we look at it, and it's not entirely this, it's not entirely covered like it's legitimate sport, but that is a lot of it. We base it on how people are booked and how they're presented in the universe of pro wrestling. So if we're doing that, and there are all these different leagues, even if some of these leagues are, not nearly as visible, they're not the major leagues or whatever way you want to look at it. When you have people performing at just such an incredible level and they're doing things that are not being done even at the highest level, whether that's physical feats or working a ton of matches or incredible win-loss records, they're even just really compelling storylines and people, becoming popular in a way that's going to put them on the radar of the major promotions. To me, it's a disservice if you don't treat those people who are performing at the high level with the respect that they deserve. And by that, I mean, if you have someone, and in the past, the list has looked at this a little bit differently, and my predecessor looked at it slightly differently. Like, okay, if someone's on TV with WWE, even if they're only on a few times a year and they lose, they're in WWE, so they should outrank almost any independent person. I'm like, I don't know about that. I don't think I agree if you're looking at it in terms of it being a sport, and you have someone who's, an occasional pinch hitter in Major League Baseball versus playing in, Japan or South or Central America or somewhere else. They're not less of an athlete. They're not less of a performer in that role because they're not warming a bench somewhere. And I say that with love and respect. Someone is in WWE, they didn't get there by accident, and it's not their fault necessarily that they're on that bench. But by hook or by crook, it's what happens, and I don't think it's entirely fair to give someone. And I think it also just becomes a very repetitive and predictable list if you do it that way too. I don't think it's much fun to read if every year it's just, here are the WWE guys, here are the AEW guys, here are the New Japan guys, and then you just go through and then like, okay, we have this many independent spots left. Let's put them down here. Why? Who would want to read that?
I agree with your philosophy. You know what I mean? Because then it would become ranked on promotion solely and nothing else. So I think that's a great philosophy.
And certainly the WWE wrestler, someone at a high level in WWE is going to have an advantage over anybody else, even AEW, just because it's not at the same, it's not at the same level in terms of viewership, in terms of butts in the seats and all that. But, they're more similar and can be compared, whereas it's a little harder to compare the WWE champion to your regional champion.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very well said, man. I appreciate you even navigating these questions, man, because I know you get a lot of criticism. I want to ask you this. Obviously, Cody Rhodes, number one. It's really hard to push back on that. I can make a case for one or two other, but I really can't. Cody, what he's done, not even just finishing the story and that whole story arc, but essentially, winning the Rumble, fighting on these house shows, staying after with the kids. All he has done for pro wrestling as a whole over the years, and I know this is just, this year, but he has done so much. I'm sitting there watching him at these house shows and Raw, and I'm like, no, he's got to make it to Mania, like protect Cody at all costs. Like, and he's out there every night. Like, please don't get injured, doing his thing. I think it was probably an easy decision for you guys to make Cody number one. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think it may have been. I've been on the committee for, I don't know, about 10 years, something actually longer than that. It's probably about 11 or 12 years. And then the last 4 years I've been, at the helm of it. Actually the last 2021, 22, 23, 5 years. Wow. Okay. So yeah, my math is probably off on how long I've been doing this, but I cannot recall an easier decision for number one with less pushback. I think you have a really strong number 2 in Swerve Strickland.
Yes,
And I
easy.
think a lot of other years he would have been number 1, based against the rest of the competition out there. Cody Rhodes checked every single box. I mean, if you look at the criteria, he has, the achievements, the in-ring achievement, the wins and losses, won almost every match he was in, won the big championship from Roman Reigns, ended that streak, won the Royal Rumble. So that by itself is probably enough. But then you also look at his activity, and he was just, like you said, out there almost every time. And anytime WWE presented any kind of show, there's Cody, and he's going to have a match. Incredibly popular. He's drawing great business while he's out there. So he's not just out there doing it to crickets. He's out there, special connection with the younger fans, like you said, but just in general, hugely popular. And then has a ton of influence over the industry with that, which is another criteria. Quality of competition, that's another thing we talk about. And he was wrestling anybody and everybody, and of course took down Roman Reigns, defended against AJ Styles. I'm trying to think what else was in the evaluation period, but there's, certainly on the way up the card, was doing an amazing job. And then you have, I believe his win over Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam was this period too. And then the other thing is technical ability and the quality of the matches. Cody's matches have been great. Like he's, depending on your taste, maybe you might like this person or that person better, but he's been doing an awesome job. And, multiple match of the year contenders between that match with AJ Styles that received, got the 5-star rating from Meltzer. You have the match with Roman that, just everybody loved. Just a great storyteller. He just ticks every single box. To me, this was a no-brainer for him to be the number 1 ranked wrestler this year.
I love it. And the quote that he used, and you guys, I saw, I think it came out with a release, or other people were tweeting as well. And I thought this was very interesting. And again, guys, like, obviously this is a list, this is a ranking. Don't, value your self-worth or anything crazy like that on a 500 list for wrestling, especially if you're just getting started in the business, but I have seen a lot of those posts years ago, like, hey, it doesn't matter, or hey, you'll get there, and all that kind of stuff. But it's interesting what Cody said here. And here's the quote, and correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not a wrestler who pretends like the number doesn't matter. That's how you can spot a liar. Right? Man, Cody's such a heel. If they ever, if they ever tweet, nobody cares about their number on this list. We all care. And I think it's very true. It's very validating. Your comments on what Cody said there, I thought it was very interesting that Cody just outright said that.
I mean, it's hard to speak for everybody, and I do think there are people who legitimately don't care. But on the other hand, I will defer to the WWE World Champion, the undisputed champion, the number 1 ranked wrestler on this. He's obviously heard people talk about stuff, or can get a vibe that people care more than they're leading on. He cared. He was previous years, he was, why am I not number 1? And he was very, like, I don't want to say he was hot over it, but he was like, well, okay, fine. Like, what is this list? And then that was actually something that was talked about. I don't remember how much of it made it into the actual interview with him in the magazine. But at some point, if we put out the entire cut of the interview, you would hear him talk about the different criteria. And it was simultaneously, hey, here's why you were number 1 other years, but here's why you absolutely were number 1 this year. And it's just a really fascinating conversation. And to, have that with the top wrestler in the world. Because we have these conversations with randoms on Twitter all the time. Like someone without a profile picture and a bunch of numbers behind their name. But it's, having good faith with Cody Rhodes is a different story. And I think that's pretty validating to say that the list means this much. I remember a couple of years ago when Kenny Omega was number 1, he didn't say it in the exact same words, but he said, when you're validated by your peers, that's one kind of success. But then when you have people whose living it is to cover the sport you're participating in, and they can say that you're doing this at this high level, as opposed to every other person in the industry, it's really humbling. And how could you not think of that as an honor? So, if Cody Rhodes and Kenny Omega both agree it's prestigious to be ranked number 1, I think it's not the be all end all. Roman Reigns didn't make the list this year, which was a bit controversial, but we have minimum match activity
criteria.
requirements. He had 5 singles matches. and that was it. I mean, the requirement is really 10 singles matches, but there's a loophole where if you have 6 months that you have at least one singles match, well, okay, then you're active for half of the period. We'll let you in based on that. And it's not saying that he's less. I mean, you could make a very strong case that I don't think you could say he's number one over Cody this year, but you could say he's 2 or 3, certainly. There's a case for that just in terms of his star power, in terms of his reach, in terms of that championship run, even if he wasn't defending the title a lot. But that's not what we do. We rank what happened during the year in the ring. So that's how it goes. But that's to say that obviously there's no denying Roman Reigns. So maybe somebody else didn't make it on for various reasons, but that doesn't mean they're not doing great work.
And thank you for saying that about Roman as well. And it's completely fair. Here's the criteria, and here's a list based upon said criteria.
And
no
that way
disrespect.
for years, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's something a lot of people need to understand. Like, no disrespect. And first of all, finding the criteria, I'm sure it's hard to settle on like what qualifies as what's going to be our criteria, man. So again, I really appreciate it. I want to be respectful of your time. I'm gonna get 2 more questions if that's all right, Kevin. Is that cool?
Sure, yeah.
Appreciate it, man. I want to talk about the women ranking in the 500. I love that. A lot of women this year here in the Northeast. In previous years, we've seen names like Erica Lee, Ruthless Lala on the list, which is so amazing to see. I love that. And now we have the women's, I think it was the 100 or 150 originally. Now it's the 250. We'll see what happens this year. I'm not prying. Don't worry. We'll see what happens with that. I'm very excited for that one. But to see, more commonly, more and more women names pop up on this 500 list. Is that something where, because you guys are always growing and changing and evolving, just as we saw the women's list went up to 250. Is that something where maybe in the future, and again, I know the criteria are, like world championships or weight classes and things of that nature. I read it very carefully. Is that something perhaps down the line where we would integrate or change the criteria so more women like the Becky Lynches and stuff like that would be in the top 500? I'm sure that conversation's come about, and I understand it's a hard process.
It's definitely come up, and it's something we've considered. We've had the conversation to some degree a couple of times, because there's the idea that it can be confusing if someone looks at the PWI 500 and they don't see Becky Lynch, but they'll see someone on the independents. And there's 2 things at work here. There's one is that on the independents and occasionally elsewhere, you have women wrestlers who are wrestling men for championships, for, in tournaments, in all these situations where, hey, if this wrestler is doing these things, they're going to rank. But for years, we were not including women. And we had in the past included a couple of women who had, wrestled intergender matches. I know some people don't like the term, but, and who had won championships. And then when we had the expansion of what was originally the female 50, which is a terrible name, but it's the women's list is, you had the discontinuation of that. And one of the first things I did when I started as editor-in-chief was say, well, that's kind of silly. If someone is winning what's effectively a heavyweight championship or is nominally a heavyweight championship, and that year, that was the year that Tessa Blanchard won the then Impact World Championship. So it's like, how do you ignore that and just not talk about it on the list? It would be weird to have the person they beat on the list and not have them, right?
Exactly.
So the way we look at it, because on the other hand, not everybody fits neatly into whatever gender box. So like if you have someone like Max the Impaler, the non-binary nightmare, Max the Impaler is literally the TV champion for both men and women in the NWA. And Max the Impaler, based on whoever they're facing in that match, they will defend the appropriate championship. So like if it's against Kylie Page, it's going to be the women's championship. If it's against Mims, it's going to be the men's championship. So, we have situations where like, oh, we're going to arbitrarily put you on one list or the other, regardless of who you're wrestling. It just seems weird to me. So this is what we do now, and it is a little bit, I get where it could be a little bit murky. But to answer your question, I think there could be a future where the lists are just all one, but the problem with that is I wouldn't want to make it a bigger list. And if it's the PWI 500 and that's it, one, I think people like having these lists where more people kind of get a chance to be recognized. But 2, I think you could look at someone like a Becky Lynch or a Mercedes Moné or somebody who's like getting a lot of TV time, has championships, is at that upper tier, and they would do well on such a list. You could say like, okay, maybe this person's top 10 or they're even number one on the list. There are fewer opportunities for women as you go further and further down the card. You very rarely have a secondary championship for women. It's really only in recent years that's become more common in the big promotion. And then if you get down on the independent level, it just doesn't exist. Like unless it's an all women's promotion, you don't have a secondary title, period. So how are people going to qualify if they don't have tournaments they're competing in, if they're just kind of losing to the existing championship all year, if they're the champion all year? It becomes difficult to figure out how to slot people in. And to me, it's a disservice to have someone who's like a mid-carder in the WWE, we'll say the Raw women's division, have them ranked at like 350 because they didn't have any titles and they lost a bunch of matches, but they're still like a bigger star within the division. Like how would it be a service to Natalya to have her ranked on the back half of the 500? And unless we're looking at it in terms of it's a heavyweight list and we base it off of the intergender competition and these titles that are open to everybody. So that's a convoluted answer. But my concern is if we combine the list together, it would disproportionately affect women wrestlers and also just independent wrestlers.
Indeed,
you would
yeah.
see far fewer on the list. And to me, I'd rather, at least for now, sit with the confusion and the having to explain, well, there's a heavyweight division, a women's division, and a tag title division, and you rank based on where you compete. I'll have that conversation again and again if it means it makes the most sense to recognize all these different wrestlers for their individual achievements.
Yeah, I'm a numbers guy, so that's a really fair argument. And again, thankless job that you have, Kevin. A really thankless job, man, and we appreciate you doing it. Again, like it has to be 500 because that is an iconic number. It's synonymous with the magazine. And like you said, indie wrestlers would get pushed back in that case. It opens up a whole another can of worms. It's an interesting conversation to have. It's an interesting conversation. And I'm glad that you guys have had that. Real quick, I want to ask you this one, just pulling back the curtain, proverbial curtain, if you will, whatever you're comfortable with sharing. Just take us real quick through maybe an outline of what the process is of, you got 500 names. I'm sure there's, a group of top 10. I'm sure there's a bunch of emails being sent. I'm sure you guys have eyes certain places. You have a lot of people that do a great job with the women over there. How does this all come together? Can you give us like a little outline or a quick, like how you organize all this? Are we narrowing it into hundreds and then narrowing it into tens? How does this all work?
Yeah, it's a huge process. Even just we do accept submissions, and even just the submissions, which typically it's mostly independent wrestlers, and it's not the wrestlers who are like competing for the GCW championship. It's usually people who are more like regionally based. Not entirely. There's some people who are higher level who will submit.
And you do not pay. I don't mean to interrupt, but like there's been a lot of comments I see.
I don't know where this
You
comes
do not
from.
pay. This is not a thing. Please don't like solely like people's names and say that. That's not a thing.
Yeah. So I don't, to the best of my knowledge, and again, I've only been on the committee for like a decade and a half. That has never been the case. And when I say to the best of my knowledge, I only question that because I've heard people say flatly $35 multiple times. So that might be one of those things where it's like, I think most likely it's an urban legend and it just gets repeated and repeated.
It's ridiculous.
But I think, I will allow like a 0.01% chance that somebody at the office had a scheme going for a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
I don't think that's the case.
Yeah.
But no, it's you don't pay to get on it. There's not, and I will say, if you are like trying to get an Emmy or you're trying to get your name listed in the Who's Who or whatever book, you do pay an interest fee for that. If you're submitting to a lot of times to like a literary journal, you wrote a short story, you want to get it published. Well, sorry, Bucko, you got to pay the fee.
Mm-hmm.
It's considered an administrative cost. We don't do that. But we did have the form without any money due, and this year we got more than 500 just from that form, from the independent. Right. So of course, like the lion's share of those wrestlers did not rank. Because just it's a limited list and you have people at all these different levels and who are on television and who are competing internationally. So, you have that. But when we go into this meeting to answer the other part of your question, we have, our committee, and we've had some people who've been doing it for years. We have the senior writers, Al Castle and Harry Burkett. We have Brian Solomon, who former editor-in-chief of SmackDown magazine and other publications for WWE. He's been with us for a long time as well. He's in there. We have Righteous Reg. We have Kristen Ashley, Jason McVeigh, Candice Cordelia. If I'm leaving anyone off, I apologize. But basically, we look at people who have interest in different types of wrestling, expertise with different types of wrestling, who follow different areas closely. Jason McVeigh is a great example. So he knows more about TNA and Impact than anyone I've ever met. He's like an encyclopedia. He will, oh, didn't so-and-so wrestle so-and-so on like the third or fourth? No, actually that was the fifth week of TNA Impact on pay-per-view, and it was $9.99. Like it's remarkable how much he knows. And then also he closely follows wrestling in the UK. He's based out of Northern Ireland, so he's following the UK promotions closely for us. He writes a column about the UK and Europe. You have Kristen Ashley, who is just her passion is for women's wrestling. Of course, co-founder of Bell to Bells, just a huge driver of the expansion of the women's 250 list and everything that happens there. And she has a particular like, okay, let's make sure that we didn't leave off like so-and-so competed for this title and they beat like these three people, and like don't forget about Maki Ito because she had the DDT Extreme title during the period, and or sorry, not the DDT Extreme title, the GCW Extreme title. Yeah, we try to have a nice balance of people who can contribute in these different ways. We make up short lists. I think we start at the top of the list. That really shouldn't be a surprise. We debate over a number one, and then we try and form out a good top 10, a good top 20, a good top 50. Usually as a group, we will work through the first 100 or so, and then somebody will take the list and kind of start plugging in names elsewhere. In the last couple of years, we've been getting further than the top 100 or so, and it's more the top 200 or 300. And then somebody else goes and, hey, what do you think of this list? And like, oh, you missed so-and-so, make sure that they're on there. Oh yeah, they should really be above here. And oh, double checking, this person didn't have enough matches, let's take them off. And then there's all the fact checking, all the research, and moving the list around. I've said this elsewhere, but last year we left off Tetsuya Naito, and that was a huge embarrassment. It was not on purpose, of course. But the way that happens is you have this list and you're moving parts and you're slotting people out and you're taking, okay, well, let's figure this out because this person needs to be in the top 50 and we have to move this person down a few slots or we'll put them off to the side here. And you're working with all these spreadsheets and multiple spreadsheets. And sometimes you have a clerical error. You have someone get wiped off. There was one this year. I won't name the name. Where the wrestler didn't end up not on the list, but we caught it pretty late. Like it was like, oh, well, we had him here. What the hell happened? So then we have to move everybody down and we have to, so it's a process. And we're human beings. We're a relatively small team. So it's a process. It's a process.
Yeah, man, I see you shaking your head. And again, like very, very thankless at times. I know, man, but I know, and I told you earlier, like especially here in the independents, you made a lot of people's day, and it's very validating for them, to see all their hard work really pay off. And I appreciate you and your team taking the time in, and I also want to just thank you, man, for my buddy who I lost recently, man. He was the one who turned me on to PWI, and he would get the 500s and got me into wrestling. And I'm dating a wrestler now, man, and it's crazy, and I'm just so appreciative of the magazine and the 500 and just the moments that we got to experience in this household with the PWI and everything you do. So I just want to thank you, man, for everything, man, and just continued success. Thank you, Kevin, so much for a few minutes of your time, man.
That means so much. Thank you. Thank you for the kind words.
Appreciate it, man. And real quick, before we get out of here, we are all about that shameless self-promotion here on the BCP. Guys, again, $10. You can subscribe for 8 issues, I believe. Kevin, tell them all about PWI, what you got going on.
Yeah, so that's the digital subscription offer, which we have for a limited time. There's also a digital and print bundle that we sell. If you sign up with that through our website, it's a little bit more money because print magazine costs money to make, but then you get a physical, tangible record of the magazine as well as the digital edition as soon as it's released. Cool thing, if you sign up for that right now, you will get the digital edition of the PWI 500. It gets delivered to you right away, so that's included in your subscription. We publish 9 times a year. We're released to newsstands around the world, but heavily in North America, Canada, US. Look for us in Walmart's, Barnes and Nobles, drugstores, just anywhere you get your magazines, and pwi-online.com for subscription info, to buy back issues, to buy a copy of the 500. We're actually the stock of web order 500 issues, which is no different than what you find on newsstands, but we put it aside knowing that people are going to want to buy it online. Those are almost sold out, so if you want to get a copy, make sure you get in soon on those.
Love it, man. Thank you, Kevin, for taking a few minutes of your time. Thank you for all you do as pro wrestling, the independents at large, man, and just continue success moving forward. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And guys, like we always say here on the BCP, everyone stay safe, stay positive, take care of each other. We out. Peace. BCP is brought to you by our favorite store, Funkenstein Wrestling Superstore, located in the Englishtown Flea Market in New Jersey from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. Saturdays and Sundays, and online at FunkensteinWrestlingSuperstore.com. Get your favorite wrestling merch, retro video games, Ninja Turtles, Ghostbusters, G.I. Joe, so much more. It's our favorite store. Thank you, Heather and Dan, for sponsoring the BCP. Also got to welcome back our sponsors, the No Gimmicks Podcast, the podcast that keeps it 100% real 100% of the time. Check out our guy Kelvin, only on the No Gimmicks Podcast. Wrestling All Day, All Night is the best wrestling discussion group on Facebook. We provide more of a community feel here and have wrestling fans introduce other fans to something they may not have seen before, such as old school wrestling, indie wrestling, Japanese wrestling, and so much more. We also strive to be a source of information regarding upcoming wrestler meet and greets and signings. And remember, we're open 24/7, all day, all night. Be sure to follow on socials and join the group on Facebook at Wrestling All Day, All Night. Welcome back our sponsor, Sweet Chin Musings. Sweet Chin Musings is the creation of the reigning, rarely defending, highly disputed champion of wrestling podcast, Mr. Perfect, Mike Mueller, and his tag team partner in crime, Luke Kudialis. SCM focuses on the in-ring product of WWE and AEW, no dirt sheet rumors here, as well as backstage news, predictions, and analysis of characters, storylines, and major pay-per-views. Old school fans, don't worry, we have you covered as well, with a look back on classic matches, top 10 lists, and interactive tournaments that let the fans decide who is truly the best of all time. You can find them at Facebook at Sweet Chin Musings, and check out the podcast on all major podcast platforms. Please welcome back our sponsors on the BCP Plus and the podcast, GPW Productions. GPW provides your promotion or event with top-tier video, audio production, live streaming, and more. I can personally vouch for them in saying they are hands down the best production company I've ever worked with, as they have and continue to work with the likes of AEW, GCW, StarCast, MLW, not to mention the majority of the local independent promotions here in the tri-state area. They can even help you film a vignette or promo for your persona or gimmick. And guess what? GPW doesn't just work in wrestling. No, they cover MMA, boxing, basketball, or any other sporting event as well. On a personal note, I'd like to thank Mike Sesko, Frank León, Oneil Andrews, and the team for giving me multiple opportunities to work with them and some of the best talent in the world. Thank you, GPW, and guys, book GPW for your promotion or event today at contact@gpwproductions.com. Please welcome back one of our favorite podcast sponsors, Key Nation, featuring our very own BCP and BCP Plus contributor, Mr. Wayne Keener. Make sure to follow Key Nation on TikTok and Instagram for great puns, memes, dad jokes, and random ridiculous content. Thank you, Wayne, for sponsoring the BCP. Don't forget to check out one of our newest sponsors here on the BCP, Chop City Wrestling. Chop City Wrestling is where our pal Ryan Steniford takes chops from wrestlers and donates $20 to Connor's Cure for every chop he takes. Follow his adventures on his YouTube channel for all those chops and some great pro wrestling content, all for a good cause. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, and thank you, Ryan, for sponsoring the BCP. Please welcome in our new podcast sponsor, From the Left Side. From the Left Side has all of your wrestling and sports news. Check out From the Left Side at facebook.com/From the Left Side with On Air E, and be sure to hit that follow button. Thank you, From the Left Side. Please welcome back one of our favorite sponsors, Mania Club. Established in 2015, Mania Club is a WWE-recognized community for fans with an eclectic love for both the world of professional wrestling and raising money for Connor's Cure. During WrestleMania weekend, we host the official tailgate of WrestleMania while also celebrating the life of Connor McCollum. They are the single largest donor within the V Foundation for Connor's Cure with over 150,000 raised. Please donate and join the Facebook group over at Mania Club on Facebook. Donate at jimmyv.org/Mania Club. Guys, please welcome in our new pod sponsor for the months of May and June, J. Adam Photography. Jay provides quality, artistic, innovative photography with a quick turnaround time. Be sure to check out his latest ISPW wrestling pics and much more stellar content. Right now, wrestlers can do a special portrait shoot with Jay in Sparta, New Jersey for just $50. Contact Jay at Jay Vogel on Facebook and be sure to follow him across socials. Thank you, Jay, for sponsoring the BCP. Guys, let's welcome in our new pod sponsor, Cooper Groove Grips. When you play Cooper Groove drumsticks, you get increased sensory feedback from your hands so your grip will naturally loosen, but you have complete control. With that taking place, you don't have fatigue and soreness, which can lead to long-term issues. Guys, as a drummer, Cooper Groove is my drumstick of choice. Sweaty hands aren't a problem. Grip is good. And don't forget to check out their amazing Cooper Groove bats coming out soon. Guys, follow at Cooper Groove Grips on Facebook. Guys, please welcome in our new podcast sponsors, ISPW Weekly, where we dive deep into the world of ISPW, the crossroads of professional wrestling. Join Jumpin' Jay and Total with Tom every week as they interview the stars of the ring, uncover their stories, rivalries, and the electrifying action that defines ISPW. Be sure to check out ISPW Weekly on the ISPW Facebook page every week. Please welcome in our new pod and daily site sponsor, Twisted Shamrock Studios and Spa, located in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. Twisted Shamrock is a retro spa experience for the average Joe and Jane. Meet the next evolution of recovery and relaxation. Right now, you can try their introductory offer, where you can try a core service to include massage, skincare, facial, stretch therapy, body slimming, toning, personal training, and spray tanning for 30 minutes for just $30. This is perfect for our wrestling pals as well. Book today. Call 484-574-8868 or visit www.twistedshamrockstudiospa.com. Guys, please welcome back our podcast sponsor, Wrestling Games, live signings, and more ahead of their inaugural signing September 1st in partnership with Revolution Wrestling Federation, featuring Buff Bagwell, Gary Wolf, Renee Michelle, and L.A. Spoon. Pricing includes shout-outs from all the wrestlers. Havoc Monsters Ball Deal, $125 gets you one 8x10 each by all four announced talent and any indie wrestler that shows up on the live. There'll be at least 2 to 4. $20 each, additional 8x10 individual photos only. First photo, 25 shipped for first. Each additional 20 includes a top loader for each photo. Any mail-ins are $30 for each item, 25 each additional. More items to be posted later. Feel free to message Emil Menard for any questions or purchases. Guys, I want to shout out John Blaine's Around the Ropes podcast for sponsoring the BCP. Around the Ropes podcast is your weekly live compressive coverage of all things pro wrestling, from indies to the main event of WrestleMania. Join John as he talks to some of the biggest names on the indies. Search Around the Ropes podcast on Facebook, Twitter, IG, and subscribe on YouTube by searching for Around the Ropes. Guys, please welcome in our new podcast sponsor, Inside Heat Sports and Collectibles, LLC. Ahead of their Hamburg Sports and Hobby Show featuring special guest Penn State and #2 overall draft NFL pick New York Jets player Blair Thomas, October 20th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. in Hamburg, New Jersey. Blair will be signing from 11 to 1, and on-site vendors will have sports cards, TCG, memorabilia, and more. Contact Pete at InsideHeatSports@gmail.com for more info. Thank you, Inside Heat, for sponsoring the BCP. Guys, please welcome in our returning pod sponsor, Warriors of Wrestling, ahead of their next event, October 5th in Staten Island, New York, featuring AEW star Khan, New Warriors champion Danny Moff, Women's champ Angel Metro, TJ Marconi, Darius Carter, Chris Steeler, Roger Mendez, Mike Ditello, the Boss Joe Bellini, and more. Get your tickets now and follow Warriors of Wrestling on YouTube. Guys, please welcome back our returning pod sponsor, Bree Combination Wrestling. Bree Combination Wrestling presents Nightmare at the Mecca, Sunday, October 20th at the Mecca, 106 Bergen Ave, Richfield Park, New Jersey, featuring BCW Women's Champion Vicious Vicky, BCW Heavyweight Champion Darius Carter, the Allfather, Anthony Gangone, Jay Bougie, and more. Get your tickets now and be sure to follow BCW on YouTube and Title Match Network.